Here.
Wellman,
Here.
Cotton,
Here.
Warnick,
Here.
Royster. Running a few minutes late, I'll mark him whenever he does arrive.
Okay, so first up, we have Miss Powell.
This is
Mrs.
Amanda
Powell
Powell.
with KDE District Comprehensive Improvement Plan Presentation.
Is there someplace I need to stand?
Wherever you want to go,
Far
Spot.
away.
Stand
as far
where you
away as
want.
possible.
Usually it's right in the middle there, so
No.
you.
Distance, just get your distance.
Okay,
You're fine.
I'm going to be going over the district improvement plan with you today. And you each have a handout inside your stack there that shows our improvement plan. As you know, all of that, not the strategies page. This is where you will see the goals that we have set. And the goals are the same as they were the previous year because they are using the same data. So the first goal is the proficiency goal, and that is based on our reading and math scores, okay, from the paper up assessment. And essentially, what we're saying is that based on the last assessment data that we have, we believe that the Granite County School District can raise to a 58% proficiency in the area of reading. 58% proficiency is above state average. And we hope to do that by the fall of 2021. As of right now, we are supposed to be taking assessments in the spring. Okay, that's the most recent news that has come out from the state. So hopefully we'll get to do that, and we will hit that 58% proficiency. In mathematics, we are currently below the state average, so we're hoping to hit 48% proficiency, which would bring us to the current state average. And we hope to do that by the fall of 2021.
Question.
Yes.
We're gonna score at 58% this time around, going into next year.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Mhm.
What was it last year that we finished up with?
It's a five increment, so it would have been 53.
53%, so we're hoping to raise it by 5%.
You're gonna raise it to 5.
Did we reach 53%? Okay.
How are we gonna do that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you about that on the back.
Okay, all right.
We
I'll
can
shut
talk
up.
about it
I'll shut up.
a goal at a time if you would like.
Yeah.
Okay. The backside is all about the strategies and the way that we're going to achieve these goals.
Okay.
Okay, so the next area is separate academic indicators. So in that section, we're talking about science scores, we're talking about social studies scores, and we're talking about on-demand writing scores. We hope that in science that we're gonna reach 40% proficiency and exceed the state average in 2021. That's the goal. And in social studies, we want to make it to 63%, that's on-demand writing, 63% proficiency. And that will, we have exceeded state average in on-demand writing on the previous assessment, and we want to continue that trend. On-demand writing is one of our district strengths.
In the past, we were at 61, so the higher you are, the less you have to increase each year, so it's 2% on that one. So.
And in social studies, we want to increase our proficiency rate to 60%, which is above state average.
What were we before?
In social studies, I think we were at around 56.
The next section talks about gap achievement. And when we talk about gap achievement, we're talking about two groups of students. We're talking about students who receive free and reduced price lunches, and we're talking about students who are considered special needs, special education students. And for our free and reduced price lunch students, we want to increase their NAPD score, which is their novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished score, by 5 points in the area of reading, math, science, social studies, and writing by the fall of 2021. For special education students, we want to increase their NAPD score also by 5 points in the area of reading, math, science, social studies, and writing by 2021, and that hopefully will help us to close the achievement gap and stay out of the targeted assistance category, which is a category where you have to get some state intervention. We currently don't have any schools that are labeled targeted assistance, and we really want to keep it like that. The next category is graduation rate, and by 2021, we expect to have 97% of Greenup County students graduate within their 4-year cohort. So that would be when they enter as a freshman, within 4 years, they would have completed their requirements and graduated. In growth, which is the next category, we want to be within 5% of the state average in the number of students meeting their growth targets. Growth is only measured in reading and math, and we want to achieve that by the fall of 2021. And the last category is called transition readiness. And that is considered transition to adulthood, okay? Going to the next level. Greenup County wants to increase our current average, which is 78.5% to 80% by the fall of 2021. And we also want to expand our dual credit program, which we've already made some huge strides toward doing this year, with Greenup County High School being labeled a satellite school by Ashland Community and Technical College, and we are expanding our programs and our offerings. Some of them are actually going to be expanded this spring. We're going to be offering some classes this spring. Okay, so there's our goals. And as Carl mentioned, he wanted to hear about the strategies, what we're going to be doing to help achieve these goals. So on the back, I have those categories broken down into the strategies that we're going to be using. We're going to be doing some things that we always do in Greenup County, which is focusing on high-yield instructional strategies and offering professional learning for our teachers on how they can implement these strategies in the classrooms. We also have to consider with Greenup County that we have a lot of non-academic barriers. We have students that require behavior interventions because their behavior is actually a barrier to their learning. We have students that we have to really work on their mental health, and right now in particular, we know that when we get them back to school, that we're going to have some huge obstacles to overcome there. So we're going to collaborate with mental health providers and use our district mental health provider to help overcome some of those barriers. And then as always, we're going to work with our Frisbee program to help overcome some of those barriers. Growth mindset has been a focus of the Greenup County School District for the past several years. It's worked well for us, and we're going to continue that growth mindset focus. But then the last strategy, and you'll notice that this strategy is mentioned in almost every section of our CDIP, and that is small group sessions for NTI and students on the virtual learning track. This is a very unusual school year. We've never experienced anything like this before, and we've really had to think out of the box on how we are going to achieve these goals when we are not getting to see our students in person. So busing them in for the small group learning sessions, inviting the ones that their parents can transport them in, and also providing extra help to those students who are on the virtual learning track is a huge strategy for us, and it's going to be highlighted through every section of our CDIP. In the next category, separate academic indicator strategies, you have pretty much a lot of the same things. Focus on implementing the standards, following our curriculum maps, providing professional learning. Another thing that we're going to be using is a lot of data analysis. When we get our kids back to school, we're going to have to test them. And when we test them, we need to see where they're at and how far are they away from where we need them to be, and start working on plans to try to get them there as quickly as possible. Because we don't have an infinite amount of time with them. You know, they're still growing up. Even though the world is kind of shut down right now, they're still growing up, and they're still, you know, it's still halfway through their academic year at this point, and we've got to make the best of it. Then you'll notice again, small group sessions for NTI and virtual learning track. For gap achievement, this has been a particularly difficult one for us because students that have economic barriers and have learning barriers, The struggle for them on NTI has been particularly hard, and we know this. So we've had a huge focus on RTI, and actually, we've had to redesign a lot of the things that we're doing for RTI. Because just because a kid is on the virtual learning track or they're on NTI doesn't mean that we're not required and that we shouldn't be offering them RTI services. So that's part of the whole program of busing them in and going to get them. We've been doing Google Meet RTI sessions since we've not been able to bus anyone in the last 2 weeks because our case numbers have been so high. That's part of the strategy that we need. We're going to continue with our name and claim strategies. Name and claim has now not just students that you invite into your classroom and you see them, but these are students that you're maybe not hearing from like you need to. So our teachers are now making contacts to try to get in touch with students who kind of fall off the radar. That has become part of the name and claim process. We have special education teachers that are assigned to the virtual learning track that have specially designed instruction for the students who are learning virtually. We have small group sessions available for them, and we are also conducting home visits for special education students. We just ordered some kits that we just got in the other day that are going to go home to students that have IEPs so that they can work on some strategies at home with their parents when they're on NTI. Even if we come back to school and we're hybrid, they may have 2 days still a week where they're at home. So those are some of the things that we're doing to try to address the achievement gap. Graduation rate strategies. One of the things that's been particularly difficult is that if a student is at risk to not graduate, and then you're not seeing them throughout their senior year, that's an even scarier prospect because they don't have that teacher there to poke and prod and kind of pull them along and encourage them, and because sometimes the motivation falls off a little bit. So it's become particularly important at the high school that they continue those interventions, such as name and claim, tutoring in small groups, inviting these kids into the building, busing them in, and even home visits for students, once again, that are falling off the radar. Not just our special needs kids, but also our seniors. You start failing a class in the first part of your senior year, and by the end of the year, that can get you in some major trouble. So that's been a huge focus of us during the pandemic. Growth strategies, data analysis of students, goal setting with students. We're going to be looking at the programs that we've used this year to see if they're yielding the desired results. And once again, pulling these students in and trying to get them into the buildings as much as possible. The last one, transition readiness. We've got students tracked by their cohort for the career pathway. The Greenup County School District, primarily both Greenup County High School and the Greenup County ATC, we're expanding our dual credit program opportunities. We're really excited about that. With several programs that the vocational school in particular, the technical center, is going to be able to offer in conjunction with ACTC. We're excited about those opportunities for our students. And one of the great things about working with Ashland Community and Technical College is that because of the pandemic, they're having to expand their distance learning opportunities for students. So programs that before kids would have to travel to campus to get, they're going to have more opportunity to get them virtually. And also the vocational school, I keep saying the vocational school, the technical center, Greenup County Technical Center, is offering small group sessions in NTI as well. And they have really, really worked hard to try to get kids in so that they can get the hours that they need in those programs. And that's, I could go on all day about the things that are happening in our schools, but that is it in a nutshell.
Nancy, thank you.
Yes.
How does our mental health individual help with this?
Well,
You've got with collaboration with mental health, okay? Is she involved in people that is at risk and those kind of things? And since the pandemic and everybody's stressed out about learning virtually, and we're talking about you're identifying kids at risk, is does she help with any of that stuff, or does she have anything to do with it?
Well, the first person that's probably going to identify a student at risk would be their teacher. Their
Correct.
teacher or the instructional aide, someone that's working with them. And the teacher would that teacher would then take that to the next step. She may go to the school counselor. And the school counselors are running, they all have their individual Google Classrooms where they have meets with the kids and they're trying to stay in touch and meet with them. And then the counselor then can make referrals to the mental health provider. If the counselor says, okay, this kid, I've touched base with them, they're not doing well. And then she can refer them to the mental health provider. And that can be the one that we employ here at the Greene County School District or the ones that they work with in the schools, like through Pathways.
So she doesn't do any mental health stuff?
They come in, it's
No,
part of
she
the,
doesn't, our staff person.
yeah, she can do sessions, yes.
Okay.
She does sessions. They come in to see her.
It's
correct?
just like with
Yeah.
tutoring, they come in and have sessions with her just like we do with tutoring and catching up with RTI.
She does the telehealth or in person, and at the beginning of the school year, we established a caseload for her based on a targeted population, for example, of kids who were in the PASS program. We knew that those kids, a lot of those kids could benefit from those mental health services, so we offered those to the parents and to the students. We can serve those students by student, parent, or teacher referrals as well. And then also if there's any instance that occurs that, like red flags that teachers see, they let Melinda know and she reaches out to those kids as well. If we notice there's some red flags like in Google Meets or some type of assignment that was turned in that may indicate something that child might need some mental health services. So that's kind of the way we're handling it. But we established a caseload for her early on, so she has that. And then she will see those kids for a period of time. If they do not benefit from that, she feels like they need continued mental health services, then she refers them out. We don't provide the long-term services, but it's more of a short-term service, and then we refer those out to other agencies who come into the schools and provide mental health.
Does she do any type of home visit, like if a kid can't make it in here because they live out Leatherwood? Leatherwood's always my go-to road because it seems so far out there. But, I mean, does she do that?
I don't know of an instance that she has, but she can, and I know that she's told that she is doing some telehealth stuff as well.
Do individuals know that she can do home visits?
Yes.
Because, again, with the telehealth, they might not have that great of internet, so.
Right.
Okay.
If there's someone who needs mental health services, she will address that in whatever fashion. I mean, she will make
She
sure
just
that
can't
it's
go by
addressed.
herself.
Right,
She would have
which
to
makes
go with
sense.
a frisky coordinator, and I know she has one out on a couple of those kind of runs. So, but as far as doing services at their house, the big deal sometimes is the kid doesn't wanna tell you what's really going on at the house.
Right.
So it is better to have them in if you can,
Right.
so.
How many contacts does she have a day?
I'll Mr. Cotton. I can provide that to you, but I don't have that information.
That would be
I
interesting
think
to
that-
know, to see if it's.
How many in a month's time does she deal with on a daily basis? I know we don't need names or whatever else, just need to know how many people that she's visited with, contacts and those kind of things.
All right.
Cause I think we got a whole lot of steps before we actually get to her, so that's my concern. And it may be mute, but I think we got a whole lot of steps where a person could have an intervention about middle ways through there somewhere before they go through all these steps to actually get referred to her.
You have to remember too, she's not the only one that they work with either. They have other outside, like, for example, at Wortland Middle School, Pathways is a big part of the mental health collaboration at Wortland Middle School, you know, so it's kind of like a team effort, you know, you've got the teachers that are talking to the kids, and they will be the ones inevitably that will find out, kind of, so a kid tells them, or something red flags the student, and then the teacher will report that.
I understand that, we got about 6 of them that come
Yeah.
in through the buildings and
Yeah.
whatever, through the whole district. But now we got one person, that's why they were hired, was to help, or mandated that we have a health provider on there to do this, to take care of our kids. And that is my concern, that, look, we don't need to pass it from her to somebody else, because we're already going through several steps to get to her. Then we're gonna meet 2 or 3 times with her, and then we're gonna pass it on. So, I just wanna make sure that we're able to meet the needs of our kids, whether they've had the house burnt down. We've got 2 or 3 kids now, the father just got killed over here in Ohio. They gotta deal with that, are we dealing with that through her, or those kind of things? So, you know, some of these kids need help.
Well, I don't, and I mean, I don't, for sure, no, I agree with what Carl's saying, that, you know, I would like to see, you know, how many cases they're having to deal with at any one time, because part of the problem I run into with it is, and I think the reason that it is going through so many steps, Carl, is because it's one person for the whole district. And, you know, we can't, you know, we don't need to send them everyone who's upset because they didn't get the blue pencil instead of the red one. And not to make anything trivial, I really ain't, but that's what their job is to figure out what is, and not
What's
trivial,
important to
but
send
what
her
is
on,
it, you know, what needs moved up, and things like that, because, you know, everybody handles things differently. You know, people will handle a death, you know, from outward appearances may seem like they're handling it just fine, and inside it's tearing them up. Other people, it could be something as simple as they got the red pencil instead of the blue one, and that sends them out, you know. So, my thinking when we got this mental health, you know, specialist in, was that we were gonna start doing a lot more in-house, you know, stuff with it. And so, I think that's where it was going. I understand that we obviously cannot, you know, we still have to have outside help pathways and stuff like that, but I would like to see it move more in that in-house direction, you know, where we're helping these kids because they see them every day.
Well, we'll have to see what her daily numbers are.
That's
and get
kind of
that
why I would like to
information.
see what it is.
And I think that's good information to have for
Right.
us to know what adjustments and improvements need to be made.
Right.
So,
Where is she, is her office at the high school?
It is, it's in the, next to the ag room.
Was that crazy that we thought it was gonna be for a high school?
It
More
is.
towards high school?
It is. It's
Okay,
mostly
does everybody
towards high
understand that it's more towards high school and
Right.
not elementary school? Okay.
And it's not really, mostly not middle school either. That's why the pathways are in the middle school.
Mhm.
She's supposed to be helping mostly high school. So for instance, when we did have an incident a few weeks ago, with a student, passing, there were siblings at the high school. So she was part of that counseling team that went in and worked with them. We had a whole day, 2 days of, open door counseling at Rutland Middle School for the students there, but then we also had something at the high school for those students. So she was part of that. Another time with all what you just mentioned with the situation with, the issue in Adams County, she will be called in to help with that as well. So those types of things she can do.
What I would like to see is, you know, grief counseling and stuff like that, you know, is typically you know, something happens, you know, they need, you know, we need people specialized in that, and they can go in there and do exactly what you just said. My concern is, what I would like to start, you know, really trying to focus on, where, to me, is the ones that fall through the cracks. And, you know, with something that we dealt with a month and a half ago, you know, kids like that, before they, you know, elementary they were alright, middle school they're alright, and then in high school they start, you know, wrong crowd, wrong this, you know, getting in there and figuring out, you know, Is it just somebody that can step in? Is it just extra time? Is it somebody that can, you know, talk to them that can turn things around? Sometimes there's not, but, you know, what ones can we help with that?
Were there any other parts of the consolidated plan that you guys had questions about?
Just a question. What did it cost us to hire this individual?
I think her salary was in the 40s. We can't, before we go with benefits, it's kind of a personnel information.
Huh?
That's kind of personnel information with salary.
Oh, okay, then.
That's something that I don't have off the top of my head, is what I'm
I
telling you.
understand, okay, all right, I
That
thought you
is-
meant it was a personal thing. you
No,
know.
no, it's just not,
I
it's not a
can't get
number that
that,
I
and I'm
can
about
remember
ready
in
to
my
jump on
head, to
it.
be honest with you.
Our grant doesn't cover the entire amount, but it covers about 75% of her salary.
I just saw your book,
Alright.
go up.
What does it cost, so then we could hire another one for the middle schools?
If the board approved that in the next fiscal
Budget.
year budget, correct?
Okay.
Then I would like to definitely get as much information as we can, not just amount of cases that they're seeing, but, you know, I want, with as little personal information as we can get, you know,
Similar to how we
do we
do
have a
with-
track? I mean, you know, are we seeing, all right, this kid went to the guidance counselor, it was handled, went back down. You know, what levels is it getting handled at and sent back down, and then what gets sent to her? What, you know,
Right, and then
in
the
her,
other
whoever it
thing is we can actually put it in like a report, kind of like how we do with, I mean, it'd be similar to what we do with technology, how many troubleshooting issues do we take care of?
give me some
with-
pie graphs.
Yeah, you want some graphs?
Yeah, some graphs.
I'll make them call it.
What's the one with the dots here and there? And,
The scatter
Scatter
plot?
plot.
yeah, we'll get that.
Yeah.
But doesn't your all's counselor deal with a lot of that stuff as well?
Right.
The counselors typically deal with, you know, you're upset because you got the red pencil and not the blue pencil.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff, or my boyfriend broke up with me and I'm devastated and I'm gonna cry all day long. Basically, the difference is a school counselor deals with someone who's having a bad day. A therapist needs to deal with someone who's having a bad life,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
or is having so many bad days that they can't, they're not able to get past it.
Okay.
And that's the major
It's a great way to
difference.
explain
Now,
that.
the
That's like the one
counselor,
we deal with.
a lot of times, is the one who refers on to the mental health provider
Okay.
because the kid ends up in the office so often, or because so many teachers come to her and say, I'm really concerned about this child, or the principal comes and says, I'm really concerned about this child, and the principals refer as well. I used to refer kids to mental health providers
Right.
all the time. But, you know, it's your teachers and your counselor, your office staff that are going to catch a lot of that, and they do.
Right.
They really do. They do a good job at catching a lot of those things.
And there's gonna be a lot for them to look for whenever we do get back in person, because there's gonna be a lot of information coming back from the homes that we need to look at and address.
Well,
So,
Are
that's
we getting way off topic here with this?
A
maybe,
little bit.
yes. So,
I'll talk about some other stuff.
Just a little, it's okay.
it's all good stuff.
We'll round it up, yeah.
Carl wasn't, I'm going off topic. Carl was good.
Okay.
I think we're both talking about the same thing.
We are,
I'll take some of the blame, Richard.
yeah.
Okay, so you're making a phone call?
Any other questions for Ms. Powell and all of her
Thank you.
beauty here?
No,
her
I think
paperwork?
she's probably got a
Thank you,
good
great
handle on it.
presentation.
Thank you.
I
Great
like the hand up.
handout.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
You made it through, it's wonderful.
Well, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna
She's gonna get her daughter
contact
to volleyball now.
Les Harbor. Les is with Dr. Associates. Michael's actually out on assignment. Les has been hand in hand with Michael the last several years on our audit and is very familiar with our district, so he is gonna go over our financial audit.
Bless you.
I hate sneezing into it. Man,
Help
Got a lot of
there'll be
kickback.
five more, there'll be five more for one. Maybe not,
Got a little kickback.
yeah. You might have to pull the mask out of my throat once. Okay, dang.
Miss Rebecca.
Rebecca, how are you?
I'm well. I have you on speakerphone with our Board of Education for you to present our financial audit.
Perfect. Are you ready to get right into it?
We are.
Oh, we are super excited about this.
A highlight of your evening.
Yes.
Anyway, my name is Wes Harbour. I am one of the auditors with Mike Jones. He audited the Greenup County Board of Education this year and a few years previously as well. My partner and I, Michael Massidi, are usually the two main auditors that come and perform the audit. Usually on site. This year's been a little crazy, so we're not able to get as much face time, but luckily with Rebecca's ingenuity and hard work, a lot of this stuff was able to be done virtually, and we're able to complete the audit still in a timely manner this year as well. So Rebecca, thank you again for all of your hard work to help us make ends meet, especially with all the curveballs being thrown at us in 2020.
Sure, it was our pleasure.
That ain't what you said.
We get a discount?
If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
So, there should be two documents that you all are presented with. One, the main meat and potatoes of this presentation being the audit report. The other one is our required communication. This is something that, by our standards, we are required to submit to the governing body. This details a little bit more about what our actual role was in the audit, and it spells out any complications we may have had, any unresolved issues that we may have. Luckily, again, Rebecca, bent over backwards to make sure all of this stuff went smoothly. We had no unresolved issues, no disagreements with management or anything, and it shows all of our adjusting entries that had to be posted. And again, these aren't anything out of the ordinary. Mainly it's just shuffling around a few things for presentation matters. There were no items that actually changed your bottom line and your fund level financials, which is where the Board of Education really lives day to day. There's a couple of things that just were shuffled around the presentation, and then a few kind of meaty ones for the pension and OPEB presentation that are only a district-wide concept. And I'll get into that here a little bit more once I get into the actual audit report. Again, some of these numbers look kind of large, but it's just presentation for district-wide items. And that's really all there is on that letter to really talk about and jump into. So without further ado, I can go ahead and get into the actual audit report. And that will be, we are close, almost 90 pages this year. These things get bigger every year, so I'm looking forward to maybe next year we can reach that goal. I think that just about every year we get a new standard that adds some new type of disclosure. And as far as government entities are concerned, they're so big and complex, you could really go down the rabbit hole with this thing. So I'm going to try and just hit the highlights, the big items that are going to come up in your day-to-day operations and need to pay attention to. Again, there's a lot of items in here. If there's anything you want me to try and expand upon and give you a little more information, feel free to just interrupt me, stop me, and ask a question. Start off with the table of contents and then our actual report. There are 3 reports throughout this audit. Just to save time, all 3 of them are unmodified or clean opinions. We didn't have any issues, and everything that we report upon we believe has been presented fairly and taken care of correctly. The page 4, after that initial report, is your management discussion and analysis. This is another required item that goes along with government financials. And the primary purpose of this, the government financials are not comparative, meaning that they show only the current year. Management discussion and analysis jumps into a little bit of the changes and why things behaved the way they did from prior year to current year. And it's just talking about any changes in such as property tax collections, if there's any new major debt taken on, any new fixed asset acquisitions, other such things such as that. And again, a lot of the stuff that's talked about here is repeated in the another district-wide presentation. It shows you exactly your change in net position. It says that you have gross. Your net position went down by 2.3 million. And again, a lot of that is just going to be taking on fixed assets, taking on debt, and then the change in the net OPEB and the net pension items. So just seeing a reduction isn't exactly indicative of the school performing, or the school board performing poorly over the year. It could be you all took on a bunch of fixed assets throughout the year, had a bunch of repairs. So that number just in and of itself isn't exactly a full story. So if we go on to the next page 11, this is your bread and butter. This is your day-to-day activity, your fund balance sheet. This is the world that Rebecca lives in, 360 days of the year, the 5 days that she has to deal with us, coming here telling her, hey, here's the district point stuff. If you look down at your fund balance of your general fund, you have a 4.5 unassigned fund balance. So that's a good positive balance. You have some wiggle room there. You have almost 4.9 million in cash for the general fund, and the general fund is your operations account. The special revenue, the other governmental funds, those are separate funds that the money and the funds in there are restricted either by grants, by capital purchases and obligations, other such things. So the general fund really just is a snapshot of here's what you're looking at day to day. So you've got some good wiggle room there. The next page, page 12, just shows some of those items that change from the fund level to district wide. I went over most of these things. They just break it down, gives you a firm number, such as the long-term liabilities I mentioned is not net position down by 30 million. The next page, page 13, is your activities for the fund level. So this is going to give you a little more familiar format with your revenues right up top, such as bringing in total government about 7.3 million in taxes, 21 some million in state grants, 2.1 million in federal, and then other local revenues could be 1.7 million. A lot of that is actually the issuance of new debt, bond proceeds. Down in your expenditures, again, broken down to a little more familiar, such as instruction, students, instructional staff. This gives you an idea of where the money was going out throughout the year. And at the end of the year, for the full year of activities, your net change in fund balance across all funds, you actually increased your fund balance by about 700,000. The general fund incurred a little bit more of a hit than others, but that the SBA projects for fixed assets actually brought you well above the break-even point. Once again, the next page is another reconciliation. Page 14 is reconciliation showing this activity from the fund level district-wide. You're going to see a lot of that OPEB pension expense going through there. Page 15 is breaking out your business type activities. Food service, meal prep and serving is a large part of the Board of Education activities. And this year, being as crazy as it was with, I believe it was March when the schools had to shut down, you all transferred into a summer lunch program delivery, and that was just a bunch of extra complications added into that. So as far as the performance goes, you all rose to the challenge, and this is what we're seeing across all the other education sectors as well, is that primarily the food service took a much bigger hit as far as revenues and expenses go this year. So your total net position is actually at a negative, which shows that you have the single audit require 2 additional reports in addition to the first one that you all came across at the very beginning. The first report is on compliance and other matters based on government auditing standards, and this is just us looking into your everyday controls. Controls are basically the idea of if there was an error, if there was some type of fraudulent activity or any type of something that needs to be caught. Controls are the items that will either A, prevent that or detect it before it gets too far and becomes a problem. Again, we did not find any issues in our testing of controls and our observation of controls throughout the audit. We have a clean report on that. And then the final report goes over the major programs and internal controls over compliance as required by uniform guidance, or more commonly known as the single audit. The single audit that requires upon those schedule of federal awards, the CIFA. Again, nothing on there, no findings, no issues to bring to light on that, and that wraps up with page 79 through 81, where we are required to detail what we did, and if we found anything. Again, we didn't find anything, there are no findings, no corrective actions or anything like that. So again, a clean report all across the board, and I think that takes us through the vast majority of that report. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot them at me.
We're speechless. We are awake, we are not asleep, just so you know.
I heard some pages rustling. I'm
Yes.
confident you guys are there.
Yeah, we're all here, so. Does anyone have any
I
questions?
thought he did a pretty good job.
Yes, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for him? Like, now, I will just prepare you that there could be questions after. I feel like Lance and I one year just thought we had nothing. So, there could be some questions that pop up a little bit later. But, if no one has any questions,
Motion.
And if there is anything that comes up later,
We're voting later.
yeah, motion later, okay.
feel free to get a hold of Rebecca. Has our line. We're able to help out as best we can.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for calling in and working late. We appreciate it.
No, it's perfectly fine. I appreciate your all's time, letting us come back and help out again.
Okay?
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do that now.
That's the main thing.
Okay.
You should have money to run this place.
We will, we'll vote on that. It's a motion later on in the meeting.
Meeting, yeah.
Yeah, this was just in the district update portion.
It's something different, it's not what you asked me about.
No, it's not.
I'll check on,
Oh, it's Swim Club?
yeah, I don't know what it is. That's not what I thought you were asking.
Okay, so Rebecca, are there any delegations?
No delegations.
Thank you.
Are there any online?
Oh, yeah, are there any online? Okay. Acknowledgement of personnel actions.
Yeah,
Can I-
that's that fast.
Yep. Can we get an approval on the consent agenda? Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Royster,
I think so.
second.
Second.
Mr. Warnick. Does anybody have any questions I'm gonna pull out of that? All right. All those in favor? Mr. Collier, new business, 2021-2022 school calendar.
I'm just starting now. Approved for a year.
No, there's not as much difference between these two proposals.
There's only 2 of them.
Yes, yeah, only 2.
Those to the 16 last year?
Yeah.
Well, right, and keep in mind, once we approve a calendar here, that's subject to be amended, and then we submit that amended calendar at the end of the 22 school year. So this calendar is subject to amendment, just like the ones we did. We had so many versions this school year of that calendar. But basically, the proposal one is a calendar that we are accustomed to in Greenup County, typically starting that week of August with our students. The second proposal puts us approximately 1 week later, starting school. You know, we had the 4 PD days, 4 holidays, and the opening and closing day in there.
Well, that's basically the only difference in them, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is the difference. And you can see, if you notice like August has a 15 out front of it, September has a 21, that lets you know how many instructional days we have in those months. This is a 175-day instructional calendar. So the students would receive 175 instructional days.
So what say everyone?
Number 2.
Number 2, I like number 2 as well.
It's getting closer to Labor Day there, but number 2 is in.
Since we can't get the fair move cold. I tried, Mr. Collier, I told, I tried.
And you don't have to vote
What's
this
the
time,
pros
it's just
and
a
cons of
discussion,
one
and then
versus
you
the
vote
other?
next time.
You ask me anything?
Yes.
In my mind, the pros of the first one is that we get students back to school faster. And at this point, in my opinion, we want students in the buildings as fast as we can get them there.
Wait a minute. Yes, we are, we're not doing a motion on this?
No, you don't do a motion, you have to do, 2 readings on it, just,
I thought our standard was always to have this done by Christmas.
well, it was, but it hasn't happened this year.
Okay, all right. I mean, I just always thought we did it before because of people
And I was
having to
gonna
take their
ask if you guys
vacation.
wanted to do a working session in January so that we could put this, speed it up a little bit. Because there are a couple other things that I need to talk to you about in January, so.
Okay,
But that's when we set dates here in another few minutes.
okay. All right, so we don't have to do a motion on that, we can move on. If anybody has any questions for Mr. Collier on that?
We not gonna pick one or decide on one? or
We
something?
can't, we don't decide until next month apparently.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the non-consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Collier, by the way. Consider the recommendation of Superintendent Racy to approve the 2021 Board of Education regular meeting dates as submitted.
Motion.
Mr. Royster, I'll second that. Is everybody okay with those?
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor? Linda? 5-0. Next, please consider the recommendation of Superintendent Racy to approve the non-resident contracts for the 21-22 school year as submitted by Fairview Independent, Carter County, and Lewis County.
These are ones we
Yeah, these
held
are,
over one.
these are different, but.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Royster, Cotton second. What's the difference this time?
Fairview has always been 10, so we checked on that one because you guys asked about Fairview in the last one, and it has been 10 for the past few years, so it's just staying at a flat 10. And then the other 2 are any and all, so because they're Carter and they are Lewis County, which is something we've always had with them. We sent back a couple of the ones that you guys had questions about last month. We've sent those back to those counties.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on
We
that?
haven't heard anything back from them.
They are
Yeah.
getting us something and they have to put it through their board, so.
Yeah, I know they're just anxious to send it back.
Okay. All those in favor? 5-0. Next up, please consider the recommendation of Superintendent Racy to approve the KDE District Comprehensive Improvement Plan. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Cotton, second.
Second.
Ms. Wellman? Any questions on this? we already asked, so. All right, all those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Next up,
Yeah, sounds good.
consider the recommendation of Superintendent Moracy to approve the 2019-2020 financial audit as presented, which was what was just now presented, so. I'm assuming we have no questions. Can I get a motion? Mr. Cotton? I'll second. All those in favor? 5-0. Next up, consider the recommendation of Superintendent Moracy, left her name out, to assess liquidated damages at an agreed upon contract rate of $500 per day based on the most recent information. Wordland ES roof replacement, contractual substantial completion date, 6/30/20. Email notification to RTI that Friday was ready for the manufacturer to review the work, 10/31/20, 123 calendar days. Kel ES roof replacement, contractual substantial completion date, 7/14/20. Email notification to RTA that Brighton was ready for the manufacturer to review the work, 11/20/20, 129 calendar days. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
I'll second. All right, Rebecca?
Yes.
Anybody have any questions?
Tracy, can you grab Ray?
Yes.
How's that going?
Ray! Why don't you just yell down the hall?
Hooray.
How is that going?
I believe at this time, both roofs have been signed off on by Firestone, which is the warranty holder, and I'm not gonna pretend to know any more than that, right? Kitchen
I heard
container.
Firestone.
They're just
Hello,
asking
Ray.
about the update on the projects.
Mr. Ray.
Oh, we're sorry that you had to wait till the very end.
Yeah, I was put at the very bottom. That's all right.
Bad.
First one in, last one to
Well, now,
leave.
that's right.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any questions?
Does the contractor know that we're doing this?
They will know, yeah, they've got a pretty good idea, but they'll get a full report from the architect tomorrow.
Have they said, we ain't gonna stand for this, or have they said, sorry, we'll pay you? What's been the response?
My understanding is they are not happy about it, and they have mentioned coming to this meeting, but they have not shown. And they have discussed wanting, us to do them a favor for this, and I'll be honest, I don't do favors with taxpayers' money. So this is taxpayers' money, and I think that if they did not hold up to their end of the bargain, then they should fulfill the contract, because that is a lot of money, and we spent a lot of time working with them and trying to accommodate their needs so that they could get the job done. It was done poorly, had to be redone. So, in my opinion, we need to be good stewards of the tax money.
What's their response for the delay?
Ray, what are their thoughts?
They've not given me a direct response as far as the head guy for Bryden. Now, the workers, they was pulled off these jobs in the very beginning and sent to other jobs, which throw them behind. They shut down there in the summer at McKell for 2.5 weeks. That crew did, and they brought the ones from Wortland to McKell, so that throwed Wortland behind a couple of weeks. So, I don't know. That's their contract. They signed the contract. They'll be done by this day, and as you can see, they're, I forget how many, 120 days behind or something like that. So,
And in the email that I sent, I explained that is a preliminary number. We know there are gonna be changes based on rain days. It's up to the contractor to turn that information in to our architects, and then they authenticate it through a weather
weather.
site. Yeah, so we know that these numbers are likely to change. This is just the information that we have right now. To our knowledge, as of today, there's not been any weather days
They've,
turned in.
Architects have asked them in every progress meeting we've had for the weather dates, and they have never once turned in a weather date. So, and the weather date is, if it rains for 3 days, you can't work. All they gotta do is submit a weather date to the architect, and they only have 3 more days to the contract. So Up to this date, there's never been a weather date turned in, so.
Okay. How much money do we still owe them?
On the Wordland roof replacement, we have an outstanding pay application of $91,000. Our assessed damages are $61,000, leaving a difference of $30,000. For McHale, we have an outstanding pay application of $99,000. Our assessed damages are $64,000, leaving a difference of $35,000. It's my intention, if the board approves, to move forward with assessing these penalties, that I will process the pay application this week for the difference. It's
So
my intention.
we've also got damages in the building too, that we need to
Correct.
subtract, ceiling tile, teacher supplies, we had some, supplies at McKell, that was for the blind, I guess, the teacher bought out of her own pocket.
Yeah, and Ray's turned all of that into.
So
our
that's all
protective
included in
deposit.
this?
That's not included,
That's
this
not
is just a
included in
separate board,
Oh, okay.
this is a separate, requirement to assess damages, so that's completely separate, and Ray and I have been turning that into them, that doesn't require a board action.
And
Does
we
the
have,
insurance cover
we
it?
have the contract and it specifically contains the liquidated damage
Correct,
provision.
at $500 per day,
Does the liquidated damage provision have a cap on it?
it does not,
No,
$500 per day
per day.
$500 per day,
for ever how many days?
that's
No
correct,
cap.
that's correct.
Okay, hold him to it then.
And the thing with McKell, and this is not, this number on McKell is not 100% accurate, because the final on McKell would have been today, because we was just down there with them
With the
Friday,
Firestone
so,
people.
with the Firestone people. So the Firestone, the warranty, yeah, would have been, the
I
final
think they
would have been
sent
today.
it through when the notification was
Yeah.
that it was ready, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
We'll talk
Was-
tomorrow before we.
Was any of the damages, not the time and the shoddy workmanship, was any of that turned into, insurance or anything like that? We didn't have any insurance payouts or anything on
Not
it?
on our part.
No.
Yeah, that's what, on our part.
Correct.
All we had was, when the roof tear off was going on, and we had rain, and it leaked down, took the ceiling tiles out. So I left, because I knew that, we knew, so we looked at, I'm thinking around $2,000 in
Mhm.
ceiling
Yeah,
tiles that we
wasn't
bought
substantial,
before
but-
school started,
Mhm.
so, and, we're gonna pay for that, and they yet not done it, so, everything's been turned into them, so.
Okay.
And the quality of the work, I'll say, Wordland up there is by far top notch. Very satisfied, the work quality looks good. The McHale end, it looks a little rough. It's got some ridges in it, and the way they laid the pre-roof down and the roofing, they went one way and laid the final cover the other way. Firestone is sending us a letter that's not the normal way that you do it, that's the way they done it years ago, I guess, but it is acceptable, and they are gonna warranty it, so.
Fully covered,
Fully
the same
covered,
warranty
20-year
that we were gonna
warranty.
get. Okay.
So that made me feel a little better, but, it's a
Okay.
good process, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's their
You just
contract.
Yep,
You
just,
just need a motion.
all in favor, yep.
Okay, all right. Anybody have any other questions? All in favor? All right, 5-0. And let's all tell Ray, if you haven't seen it, how nice Wordland's looking. I liked his little be happy thing up there, but apparently that was a fluke. I was like, that's kinda cute.
You dreamed that, you didn't see that.
You gotta do a good job up there on work.
It does look
That's so
good.
funny.
It looks good. It's-
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, we're very pleased with it, and they worked so hard. I've asked him to get the group together and get a picture made of everybody that worked on it, kind of how they used to do with construction projects,
Yeah.
because that was a big undertaking to paint that big building.
How can we get some more parking up there?
I'll work on that.
I had a big suggestion.
We kind of
We can
discussed
put it
that
in
the
the
other day,
plan.
maybe.
We've got the LPC coming up and the
You know
planning.
what?
We've got all the plans planning coming up, we've gotta do our planning, so
Yeah,
we can
that's
put
what
it
they
in.
told me 3 years ago when we talked about it.
Listen, I'm trying. I've only been here a year and a half, so I'm trying. We'll get it for you.
Both
Alright.
places.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody have anything? Let's just hope and pray for a better school year going into 2021, where you can actually see kids. All right, give me a
Miss-
motion to, oh, what, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a question that could be done before or after, but anyhow, the question is, when do we get the numbers for the first semester that tells you how we're doing, the kids are doing?
As far as testing, we really won't get those until we get them back in person and we're able to assess them ourselves. Because what we were able to do at the beginning of the year, some of it was done by us, some of it was honestly done at home. And as much as we tell parents, please don't help, we all know that as a parent, we've all hovered over top of the back of the screen and said, it's this one, move on.
You sure
You know,
about that?
yes.
Yeah. Read
I
that.
myself have just said, Maria, let me write that
Yeah.
down and you copy it.
Tired
You
of
know, I
fooling
mean,
with it, let's move it on.
yes. So, I mean, that's just a natural instinct of a parent. We're helpers, is what we do. So, I would really like to get the true assessments in person. I will go ahead and say while we're on here, there was a conference that I watched before this with Andy Bashir explaining what his new allowances were going to be for returning to school. He has asked us, we can go back January 4th depending on our numbers, but he has asked it to be a hybrid option, which we already have a hybrid option in place, so that's pretty good. But he has also recommended that we wait until the 11th, giving people time to get finished with Christmas and any gatherings they have and all the spread that would come from that event. I would like to look at the numbers and just have a real sit down and talk about that. I don't want to make a rush decision because we're pretty well planned for anything and everything. We have a lot of options going on that we can pull off pretty quick. So that's just something I would like to talk to you about, but let you know that those are the things that he suggested today in the news conference, and that I have a meeting with all of the superintendents across the state tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and that will give me better details as to what those expectations will be, what the ramifications would be as to which way we go and what we choose. So I'd like to get that information first before I talk to you guys. I'll get in touch with you individually and get your input on dates. But I'm of the mindset, we could stay in red and not go back at all. I just don't think that's a good choice for our kids. If we can do a hybrid and at least get them back in part-time, that is better than nothing. And we want our kids in because they need us now. And with the vaccine and the mask mandates, we are seeing our area start to, it's still a very high number, but we are starting to see a bit of an improvement. I never thought that I would see 80 as a good thing, but I was relieved to not be in the 100. So.
How is our staff doing?
We've done very well. This past 2 weeks, I had them, because of Thanksgiving, had them make sure that they worked from home because the numbers were over 100. So I requested a lot of them that could work from home to do so. The numbers being stabilized, I really wanted to get the kids back in for the tutoring services and the RTI, so they have returned and they're back on campus. And they're serving kids from the school. So we have kids coming in for tutoring, one-to-one session, small group. I even noticed the football coach was holding study hall and inviting the kids to come in because he's determined whether they are, even though they're out of season, he still wants them to be scholastic athletes. So I really appreciate that about him. He's been very adamant about those students getting their work turned in and calling them and saying, hey, if you want to play for me, you got to work at school. So I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what's going on as far as keeping kids as engaged as possible and keep their grades up. We did have a lot of folks decide to not assign quite as much this week, just so that we can have any kids that need extra help or that we weren't able to tutor the last couple of weeks get them caught up and not have them in a deeper hole. So, those of the students who did everything like they were supposed to have a little bit easier week. So, so that's nice.
So, do we have to be back to orange to go back to school?
No, he is saying red, we can go back, but with extra, parameters. Now, we have most of those in place. I'll find out what the rest of them are tomorrow at 2:00. But just reading the overview, we have already put all of those in place. So we would be okay to go back. The biggest thing that happens is the quarantines. That's what ends up, not people actually getting sick, but it's the strict of the quarantine. I was quarantined. I never got sick. I didn't have any issues, but I had to be away from work, and that's what makes it difficult. They have relaxed those from 14 to 10 days, so that actually will help us a little bit as well. So we have been working with the health department and with any of our staff that has an issue, and we have actually been doing the contact tracing ourselves just to alleviate some of the stress on the health department, because they have so many people that they don't have enough contact tracers to do the work. So since we have some school nurses that are doing that for us right now. And that's, that helps them make sure that they're getting their hours in, they're spending their time contact tracing. Now, the big thing that I'm thinking they're gonna ask is for us to put elementary on hybrid. I could see that be something that they will ask us to do, just because the classrooms are still kind of full when they're little like that. So we'll see what happens, but I'll find out more tomorrow, and I'll give you a full report as soon as I know. And to the people out there in social media world, as soon as I know and have my staff on plan in place, we will post something so that you have plenty of time to prepare too.
All
One of our
right.
teachers contacted the virus.
We have not had anyone contacted by being here.
I beg your pardon?
No one has contacted the virus from being here in
Correct.
school.
Correct.
Everything because whenever we go to ask questions and ask how it happened, they always say they were somewhere else or a family member had it and that's how they got it, but we've not had a transmission here that I know about. So,
Okay, they got it from the outside, the teachers
Yes.
did, but we've
we've
had
had
a few
teachers
teachers
get it, but
too
they
that-
didn't get it from school. They got
Right,
it from the
okay,
outside, maybe a
all right.
family member, something like that.
See, that's my concern on, my biggest concern is about the kids going to school. I don't have a problem going to school. I think, quicker we get them in, the better. Problem is, we can't keep the people that's outside, or their families, or friends, and
Right.
whatever else, from contacting it, and then all of a sudden, little fella has it, brings, and then he comes to school, now we got 25. So,
We have not experienced anybody testing positive that got it from school.
right,
And one of the things I will say, I noticed is, by them not being in school, they're getting together in groups in other places
right.
where they're not required to have a mask and
Yeah.
they're not required to social distance.
They don't have the COVID at the mall. It
Right.
doesn't exist there. Believe it or
So-
not, it's
And we're
completely
also
safe.
seeing a lot of our high school students going to work instead of taking classes. And teachers will call and ask, why is Johnny not getting his work accomplished? Oh, well, he's at work right now. I can have him call you when he gets home, and it'll be 1:00 in the afternoon when he should be in class. So those are the types of things, and if a kid has a chance to make money, they're gonna do that. So I do understand the situation, and often they're doing jobs that other people won't come in and do. Because they are fearful for getting COVID, or they're doing jobs that will help feed their family, so they're not going to say no to an employer. So our hope is to get them back in person, and we have already explained to our teachers that if they have a health issue that they're concerned about, then that's something we can work with them on as long as they have a doctor's note to tell us about it, we can work with them. The other thing we're working with is just making sure we have our virtual learning up and running so that people can get signed up for that ahead of time, knowing that we are going to try to go back. I'd like parents to really think about, okay, they really are going to be trying to go back. We're not going to stay on NTI forever. So do you want virtual instead? So, okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Oh, wait, sorry.
You said something about.
Sorry, yes, I have to call that first. I need to call an executive session at, my watch is dead.
You said something about a meeting in
6:49.
January.
Yes.
6:49.
49. So, Tracy, don't leave. I mean, you can leave.
basketball starts.
Okay, you're back.
Practice.
We on?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move out of executive session at 7:11?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Warnick?
Cole,
Second,
second.
Mr. Cotton, no action was taken. Can I get a motion to adjourn at 7:11?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Wellman, second.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Second.
All right, Mr. Royster, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Collier.